Okay, we're going to look at two-step equations, and before we do this, one of the first things I want to talk about is we just got through doing last week order of operations, and we talked about doing something called PEMDAS. And whenever you do order of operations, you're trying to simplify something, but whenever you're doing an equation, you're trying to solve. So when you're solving, you're actually going to be doing the reverse order. Now, here's what I mean by that. Let's take this first example we have here. I'm going to expand this a little bit. And if I want to get x by itself, one of the first things I need to do is isolate the variable. Well, how do I do that? Well, I do the reverse order of operations. In other words, if there's any addition and subtraction, I have to get rid of that first. So here I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So when I do that, I get, I'm going to write it over here to the side, negative 12x equals negative 324. Then I get rid of any multiplication or division. Well, in this case, I have multiplication. To get rid of it, I divide by negative 12. When I do that, I get x is, now negative 12 goes to negative 324. Again, you're going to be tested using a calculator and without a calculator, so you need to be able to do both. But if you get this, you get, let's see, 2, 24, 8, 4, 27, and x would be 27. So there's a difference in solving and simplifying. Simplifying, you do PEMDAS. Solving, you do the reverse. Okay, so now that we have that established, we're just going to go through and we are going to work these other examples here in the notes. Okay, so let's do problem number 2. So here are variables on the right side. Doesn't change anything. I'm going to subtract 5. So that leaves 208 equals 16k. Then to get rid of the 16, I divide both sides by 16. And then that's going to give me k equals, and again, you can put the variable on either side here, but that would be 1 and 4, 8, 13. Okay, problem number 3. So here we see this negative 3. We can really think of that as subtracting 3. If you needed to, you could rewrite this as v divided by 20 minus 3. So to get rid of the negative, I need to add 3. So that gives me 2 equals v over 20. Now I'm dividing by 20. The opposite of divide is multiply. This is what we learned in the one-step equations. You do the opposite. So those cancel, and we end up with 40 is v. Alright, problem number 4. So one of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to color over or erase, for lack of a better word, problem number 6 here. Make it bigger, okay. And I can use this space, and then I'll go back and I'll clear that out. Okay, so still doing the same thing, although we have some fractions here and different things. So the first thing I want to do, I want to add 7. Now, if I add 7 to negative 21, that gives me negative 14. And then I keep 43 over 70. Alright. Now, how do I get rid of the fraction? Remember in the previous lesson, one-step equations, to get rid of fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So in this case, before I do that, one of the first things I want to try to do is I want to try to change my mixed number to a fraction. So remember, we multiply, then we add. So strategy here, I do 7 times 14 is 98, and then I add a 0, so that's 980. And then I add 43 to that, so that'd be 20, so that'd get me to 1,000, and that'd be 1,023. So I have negative 1,023 over 70 equals negative 11 over 7x. Now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal over here. 7 over negative 11, 7 over negative 11, because whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. So that all cancels. That's going to leave x over here. Now I try to do some cross-reducing. So 7 goes into 7 once, 7 goes into 70 10. I might try 11 into 1023. So if you do that, that would be, 9, it'd be 99, and that would be 3, and that'd be 3, so, excuse me, so that would be 93, so 11 goes into 11 once, 11 goes into 1023, 93 times, and two negatives make a positive, so I end up with, multiply straight across, 1 times 93 is 93, 1 times 10 is 10. And remember, since my problem started with a mixed number, then I probably want my final answer as a mixed number. So 10 goes into 93 9 times. That would be 90 with a remainder of 3. 9 and 3/10 would be x. Now, something you can do is always go back and check and see if it makes sense to the equation. You can always check your answer. So I go back up here and try to plug it in and see if it works. In this case, I'd probably use my improper to do that. So 93 times 11, and then 10 times 7, and then subtract 7 and see if it works out, which it should. Alright, what about problem number 5? So I'm going to expand this a little bit. Okay, problem number 5, same thing. We just have a mix here of different things. We have a decimal. It's okay. Remember, we just got through saying if that's a negative, the opposite would be add. So that gives me 2.187 equals a over 8. Multiply both sides by 8. So those cancel. So if you do 8 times that, you should get 17.496. Now, again, if you have a calculator, this is relatively easy. If you don't, think about our testing strategies with multiple choice problems. You know 8 times 2 is 16, so you know it's something close to 16, a little bit bigger since that's over 2. So just thinking logically here about your multiple choice answers, plus you know it has to be a positive. So again, applying those kind of strategies. Alright, now let's go back over here and let's look at this word problem. So I'm going to get rid of that stuff. Carlos won 76 super bouncy balls playing basketball at his high school's game night. Later he gave 3 to each of his friends. He only has 10 remaining. How many friends does he have? So one of the things we talked about with word problems, always make the variable represent the thing you know the least about. So in this case, that's how many friends. So I'm going to say we'll use F in this case just for friends. So it says Carlos won 76 super bouncy balls playing basketball. So he's got 76 balls. He gave 3 to each of his friends. So minus 3 times the number of friends he has. Because if he has 8 friends, then that would be 3 per friend, which would be 3 times 8, which is 24. And then that equals how many he has remaining, which is 10. So what do? First we subtract 76. Why? Because this is a positive here. So we do the opposite. So we subtract 76 from both sides. And get negative 3f is negative 66. Then we divide by negative 3. If we do that, then we get f is 22. Now, make sure the answer makes sense in context of the problem. We're talking about friends. Well, I should get a positive answer. If I don't, then my equation doesn't really make sense, or my answer. Alright, one more. Half of your baseball card collection got wet and was ruined. You bought 7 cards to replace some that were lost. How many did you begin with if you now have 37? So, how many did you begin with? So that's going to be what we start with. So I'm going to say C, cards. So it says what? Half of your collection, half of what we started with, half of C was ruined. Then you bought 7 cards to replace the ones that were lost. How many did you begin with if we now have 37? So we subtract 7. So that's 1/2 C equals 30. Remember, to get rid of a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. If it's multiply, so you multiply by 2 over 1. So I'll cancel. That leaves C as 30 times 2 would be 60. So let's think about this. What's half of 60? 30. And then you added 7 more that you bought. That would be 37. And that's how many we ended with. So the answer makes sense. So a lot involved here. Hopefully it makes sense to you. And it's a lot of review for you as well.